Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am just getting my microphone unstuck, which is interesting with the title of the live stream today. Oops. There we go. Welcome. So, glad to be here with you all this morning, just like always. If you feel called to say hello, put your voice in the room, as it were. Please give an emoji in the chat, say hello if you're new, if you're rejoining. Hi Nancy, good morning. Yeah, how is everybody doing today? Good morning, Donna and Lisa, nice to see you. Today's live stream is called Why You Can Understand Yourself and Still Feel Stuck. Good morning, Trish. Welcome. Thank you, Lisa. And you as well. It's great to be seen. Yeah, we will give ourselves a few moments to join in. I have been awake a while, although my voice sounds otherwise. Good morning, Kona. Welcome, Bex from Portland, Maine. Yes, so this month I've created a number of live streams, to speak to the community and things that, will resonate. I've been on this path. I got clean and sober in 1999, so really that's kind of the beginning of my awakening journey. And there's still times, of course. I'm very human, very flawed. There's so much understanding and awareness, and there can still be stuckness. So we're going to dive into that very shortly. Oh, lots of snow, Nancy. Welcome, Mandiza. Thank you, Trish. Last Sunday, actually, here in the live stream, I celebrated 27 years and talked about, how addictions show up in our lives, because we all have them. Excuse me. So, let's just take a few breaths together. I really want to acknowledge all of you for joining in, for taking this time in our beautiful sacred space. And I may bring some cards in today. We're doing a little bit of a different format by having this specific topic today. And for those of you who are regulars here, that usually, we do the weekly collective reading. That will be happening. I'll go ahead and share the link. In a few days on February 11th. You can see that. February 11th in most of the world, 3 p.m. Eastern. So we will be doing our regularly, normally scheduled card reading then. So we're doing a bit of a different format this month. I am going live a few times a week. So if you are new to me, I'm a spiritual life coach and Reiki Master Teacher. And please give me a follow here on Insight Timer. I'm also double live streaming right now into my YouTube channel, so follow me there. All my replays are there. So if you have to leave, if you want to revisit any that I've done in the past 2+ years, yeah, some of them are under live stream, some of them are uploaded videos, but all of my content is there in playlists. So yes, appreciate your support. And you can follow me on social and all of that. So if you check my profile here in Insight Timer, you'll find everything you need to connect further and follow your heart's call to do that. I also want to share this new meditation that's just been uploaded to my premium tracks. Set yourself free from the past, forgive, love, and let go. So it's a 14-minute meditation to do what the title says. So if you have problems with forgiving yourself, letting go, this is a wonderful meditation. Good morning, Amy. And actually what we're going to talk about, why you can understand yourself and still feel stuck. What I'm thinking about with that topic is a couple things. And I say this often, in my life coaching, is this idea of awareness. And awareness can be weaponized against ourselves. So there's a very fine line to having a certain level of awareness about yourself, because it can be used as a sword against yourself. So, and then that comes into relationship with yourself, how you feel about yourself, what you judge yourself for. So this meditation, setting yourself free from the past, is about forgiving yourself and others, loving and letting go. Hi, J.E. Wonderful. Yeah, glad you can say that's low-hanging fruit. I know I would have energy around that if that was me in my situation. I also do have a new sleep track that's 8 hours. I would love if any of you do use sleep tracks in that way, of like listening to tracks where there's some guidance in the beginning and it drifts off into music. So I've got 2 new ones. One is this 8-hour one here in my premium tracks that you can see on the screen. And then I have a free 12-hour one in just the free section of Insight Timer in my meditations. So check those out, give them a review, give them a rating. That helps me to grow my channel and be seen more. So thank you so much. So yeah, if any of you listen to sleep tracks, please bookmark these and let me know how they are for you. Excuse me. So how many of you feel that you have a deep understanding of yourself? How many of you feel like you know your patterns, you feel like you know yourselves pretty well? You know your strengths, maybe your weaknesses, where you shine, maybe where you falter, maybe how you show up in relationships. Maybe you say, I'm always like this, or I'm never like this. Good morning, Kat. So many of you can identify with that. I definitely can. And, first, like, believe it or not, there's people in the world that don't. that don't have the capacity or the willingness or both to introspect. And there's just a lack of introspection, so then there's a lack of self-awareness. And, the issue with that is then we show up from our conditioning purely. And we're almost like robots that are automatons being moved by all of the past conditioning. Good morning, Jen. Glad you're here. You're right on time. And, it's valuable to see where that comes from, right? And I like to talk about this because it really makes sense and helps things land. Hey, Bev. How are you? It's been a little while. Great to see you. When we're born, just think about the energy of a newborn. Think about the energy of, babies, toddlers. There's just nothing between them and the world, and it's really just pure presence. It's pure innocence. And as life goes on from 0 to 8 years old, of course, caregivers and parents have to protect the child from themselves and from the world. And so, depending on how lovingly that's done or not, that then creates, our conditioning for how we see ourselves in the world for the rest of our lives until we start waking up. How many of you have heard of John Bradshaw? He was a very popular teacher in the 80s. He has pioneered some very deep work about inner child healing and toxic shame. And I've heard of him, and over the weekend I've been kind of getting back into listening to his teachings. And this idea that, what is toxic shame? There's normal shame that kind of helps us reorient ourselves in the world and, learn consequences and learn things. But then there's toxic shame, which instead of, I did something wrong, it's I am wrong. His name is John Bradshaw. And there's a couple YouTube links I can send anybody that's interested. You can send me a private message. But he has a book. I'm actually listening to it right now. I can't remember that. Healing Toxic Shame, I think. And Homecoming. Now, this is very deep work. Like, if you had a traumatic childhood, I would not recommend that you dive into, especially Homecoming, like on your own if you don't have support of 12-step or therapy or something, because it dives that deep. And the thing is that we all have things inside of us. We all have a past. We all have a childhood. And all of that gets stored as our shadow, which could be looked at as like the unconscious, the subconscious. And as I said, like, these patterns then rule our lives, and we call it fate. That's, I think Carl Jung said that. And so it's, if you have an understanding of yourself and you still feel stuck, these are some of the mechanisms that can be at play that are keeping that loop happening. And there's a payoff for who we understand ourselves to be. I am one that always blank. I am one that never blanks. That's safe and familiar and comfortable. We know ourselves. We know it's predictable. So we want to look at, there is a payoff that we get out of keeping ourselves in boxes. And we have a story that we associate with that. Because of X, Y, and Z, that's the way I am, and I can't change, or, it's too difficult. So these are all places where we can have understanding and then feel stuck with it. Our stories can become like a jail cell. So we want to first validate the reason for the stories, the benefit of believing ourselves to be that way. Tony Robbins talks about your old story and your new story. The old story is, let's say for me personally, before I got clean and sober, the old story was I'm a hopeless alcoholic and drug addict, and I can't change, and I fuck up everything that I touch, and my life is a mess, and there's no way out of this, and I'm hopeless. That would be an old story. And then the new story, it happened after I went through, hitting a horrible bottom in my addiction. The new story came after that. But the new story was, I'm clean and sober. I'm doing my best. I'm a participant in my life. I care. I care about my life, and I care about myself enough that I want to choose recovery today and every day. And I know I'm doing my best. So looking at, this self-concept, again, it's sort of this analogy of the double-edged sword. It's great to have the awareness, but then we can also stay boxed in by it and feel hopeless about change, because it's well, these are just my patterns. And then kind of looking at where it comes from. And the thing is, it's if I believe myself to be a certain way, it's easier. And I wonder who all can relate to this. Give a heart or a comment. And this is what I see often in my life coaching clients is, I know all of this, and yet, why aren't I changing? I can see it all so clearly. And that's a very painful place to be. And I talk about this often of having this head knowledge, being able to intellectualize, analyze, have a total understanding up here, but it doesn't translate down into the body, into a lived experience where I am changing now. I am doing something different. So this is where the stuck point can come. And the thing is, personal growth and change and transformation and being on this spiritual journey, it's not fucking easy. If it was easy, we'd all be enlightened. It's hard to change ourselves. And it's not an overnight matter. Now, I always go back to this life example of mine of, giving up alcohol and drugs, because it was the seminal turning point in my life. And it's such a black and white, stark, extreme example. Most people's change isn't like that. And it doesn't have to be. And I'm not saying one's better or worse. It's just easy to use it as an illustration of I had to make an overnight change because of, forced consequences upon me and inner consequences. But I basically had to change everything overnight. Or I chose to. I didn't have to. But I came to a point in my life where it was just like there was no other option, is how it felt. And most of us, and I haven't had that exact scenario since, for the most part, thank God. For most of us, we don't have the flame up so high. There's not so much at stake. Yeah, it's not easy, Trish. So, we can have years of therapy, healing, personal growth work, yet still feel stalled and still feel stuck. And so then that's when the kind of that awareness weapon and that personal growth and development weapon turns back on ourselves and becomes, what's called the second arrow. Who all knows what the second arrow means? It's a Buddhist term that, people like Tara Brach talk about. The first arrow is like, what's wrong with me? Or, yeah. No. The first arrow is having the awareness. Like having all this exquisite self-awareness. And then the second arrow is, why aren't I changing? What's wrong with me that I know all this and I'm not doing anything about it, or I find it so hard to change? That self-judgment is the second arrow. So, and I also love that quote. There's that quote that says, when think about how hard it is to change other people. Like, if you want to change other people, think about how hard it is to change yourself. And isn't it true? I'm sorry to hear about your friend, Jen, that took his own life. Yeah. And it's sad that sometimes it's things like that happen that, of course, to the person that takes their own life, and then, it can be a wake-up call like it was for you, for other people. There's so much around this idea of masking. How many of you can relate to masking in the world? We have these different masks, and they take so much damn effort to wear. and we feel obligated to do it, you know, and it makes sense because we came from a community and tribal history where we needed others to not die. And then especially too with technology and, you know, what we see online, like that, definitely there's a lot of masking that goes on there. So, you know, for me, I do my best when I'm out in the world to be authentic. I mean, if I'm feeling like shit, I'm not going to go around with this huge ass smile on my face. Not to say that I won't, you know, acknowledge somebody I know or something, but sometimes I won't do that. And so all of this gets like turned back in on ourselves and adds to the shame. You know, I'm wrong, what's wrong with me? I shouldn't be this way. I'm not lovable, I don't belong, I'm not enough. So really, when I do my life coaching work, my favorite place to go with people is this deep work of self-acceptance, love, compassion, and forgiveness. Because when that can change at that deep level, then it ripples outward and actually things change in people's lives when their self-concept changes. Who do you believe yourself to be? Hi, Rose. And then part of this can be, you know, especially if you feel stuck in areas of your life. So how many of you do feel like that? Like you can't break the glass ceiling or the glass walls in any area of your life: career, romance, health, finance, personal goals. You know, that there's something I see so often in my work is people not feeling ready and people feeling like they need more healing before they will take action to change. And that is a huge trap. We have to take the steps before we feel ready, before we think, you know, we're good enough. Bev, different aspects at different times. Jen, yes, I need more time, being the biggest lie we tell ourselves. Hi, Averly. And I love that you brought that in, and I said this the other day in a session with a client. You know, this client I'm working with for 8 months now, and you know, they're doing the outer work, and we're going deep into the inner work of, like, they want to change some health habits that are detrimental to them. And like they were successfully able to give up the habit for a few weeks, and then they had some regression. And, you know, I gave the example of, like, okay, if we're looking at this small piece of time, it looks like pass, fail, you know. But I said, let's zoom out. Like, let's zoom out, get some altitude. And if you look at your overall progress, it's like this. our mind thinks it needs to be all or nothing. And depending on how high the stakes are, again, like my recovery example, the stakes were very high. And I completely gave up alcohol and drugs from that point forward, hopefully for the rest of my life. We're 27 years now. But for things that aren't so life-threatening, let's say, like this person with what they were giving up. Okay, they quit for 2 weeks. Then they went back a little bit. They didn't go back to where they were before. And it's like, okay, up, down, but they're going on an upward trajectory. And we can forget that. So that 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Averly. Hi, Marie. Wonderful. You want to start a sisterhood and noticing not feeling good enough, wise enough, confident enough. I totally get that. And, as a life coach myself, I just have to be a half step ahead of the people that I'm serving. And that doesn't even mean, some days I might feel like I'm behind, and that's okay too. So, Marie, for your example, I definitely want to bring up for you and anyone who has never had a gifted session with me before, please reach out if you feel the heart's call, and I will take you through a powerful visioning process where we dive into all of this and we look at where are you stuck? What do you want to create? What's in the way? And we gain altitude on that in the conversations. So I have a couple spots open for that right now. I keep that reserved for people in my Insight Timer community. So if you feel the heart's call for that, reach out. For sure. Donna, you quit vaping? Is that what I'm reading here? Because I think last week you said you wanted to. Am I right? How many of you can relate? Donna said, exercise is not enough. Don't like your job, too afraid to leave. That was me for 5 or 6 years. I totally hear you. And actually, for me personally, on that front, it was another very jarring transformation where the universe removed my job. And I was terrified. So, and now I've been life coaching for 5 years and I've never regretted leaving my job and never looked back once. So, yeah, totally, Lisa. Fear paralyzes people. Yeah, and so we want to give validation to the fear because it feels like life and death. And it's like we come up against the thing, the next action that feels uncomfortable, and then this, nervous system survival response comes online. And so, that's why it's good to have support to do these things, because that, person, if it's a coach, a mentor, a therapist, whatever, you can partner with. I partner with my clients. The other thing too is like the idea of how many of you can relate to saying, like Donna, I want to quit vaping. And it's great you're mentioning it here. So, but many people, we just have it in our heads. We're going to quit doing something or we're going to start doing something else. We don't tell anybody. And then we're going to say, I'm going to start tomorrow. We say it in our head. Or we say, I'm starting today. And then, the day passes and the time comes and we don't do the thing. Or we break our word if we say, I'm going to stop vaping, and then we vape. The thing is, if you're the only one in that world and you break your word to yourself, it only hurts yourself. Nobody even knows. right? How many of you have broken your word to yourself about things like I'm talking about? I have. And we think, well, it's not a big deal, I'll just do it again tomorrow. But that erodes our self-trust. It's abandonment. It's a self-betrayal, it's a self-abandonment. And then we learn that we can't trust our word to ourselves. And yet we think, well, nobody even knows about this. Who cares? It's only me in here. But really, that's the most damaging thing, because, you know, our relationship with ourselves is the one that is the closest to us, that we're going to be with ourselves for our entire life. So it's very damaging to make these promises and then to continually break them over and over. Thank you all for those who have worked with me and your positive feedback. Yeah, so Bev's saying tell as many people as possible. Yeah. Well, and, you know, when we say it, it's out in the world, then we can get support. And even just saying it can help. And, you know, working with somebody like me, like sometimes with clients, I'll set up accountability if they want it. Be like, okay, check in with me every day. Tell me how you're doing. Tell me if you succeeded or if you didn't. Or if you're struggling and you're about to do the thing you don't want to do, text me first. You know, all of that sort of support. Because when we bring another person in, especially in that manner, it really deepens the commitment. Awesome, Marie. So, you know, some of the ways the toxic shame shows up is, you know, I should be further along by now. If I were a better person, if I wasn't flawed, or if I wasn't so fucked up, I wouldn't be struggling so hard in this way. So that's how that awareness, the gift of awareness, can turn into attack and self-attack. And then we can add in, you know, kind of another side dynamic is spiritual bypassing. I worked with a client last week who I was surprised because they were very aware. They'd never heard the term spiritual bypassing. I'm glad I got to teach them about that because they were like, oh my God, I do this all the time. So, Hi, Sherry. Nice of you to support Jen and what they shared. So the dynamic can be, you know, something comes up, I judge myself, why am I stuck, you know, what's wrong with me, why can't I just change and get over the thing, you know, and then it's like, but no, love and light, just be positive affirmations, I'm a good person, you know, I've got this, you know, or it might go into overanalyzing, like, well, it's because of my, you know, my toxic childhood, the childhood trauma and my CPTSD and all of that. Averly, great. I'm so glad. Thank you for saying that. That can be brave to say you don't know something. So kind of what I'm just saying is examples of spiritual bypassing, but it's where, yeah, we step over the pain, we step over the issue, and kind of gaslight ourselves. So if anybody doesn't know what gaslighting means, please speak up. But it's a way that we gaslight ourselves. You know, well, like for me, I can very much do this with the recovery story. Oh, you've been sober 27 years. You should know better. Okay, let me just, you know, say something positive. Or, you know, the spiritual bypassing is like going into analysis paralysis around, you know, well, maybe like, let me do some chakra work, or, you know, that could be an example. But I feel like, you know, a very clear example of it. So this client last week, this is a great example. They would get mad at their spouse. And then they would feel anger and sadness inside. But they wouldn't say anything because they were like, well, I just need to be positive, and if I say something, then it'll get worse, and we are one soul. Me and him are one. We are all one. So how would I want to be treated in this situation? So I just need to try and get over this and feel as positive as I can, as fast as I can, and not voice anything that's happening in here to keep the peace. And she didn't understand. And I didn't say you're spiritual bypassing. You know, we dove into, I asked questions about, you know, because it's much more powerful for a person to have their own insight. But then we did talk about this, and I said, you know, there's a term for this, and do you see this? Does this seem to apply? And she's like, oh my God, yes, and I've never heard of this before, and I do it all the time. And so that's another beauty of coaching is, you know, she had a blind spot. I could see her blind spot, and we shone light on it. Thank you, Bev. Glad to see you again. So spiritual bypassing can be in just being an understanding, reflection, processing, staying in that state, self-analysis, analysis paralysis, you know, and not making choices, you know, waiting for clarity, waiting for, you know, I talked to somebody months ago that wanted to be a life coach as well, and they were like, but I need more healing. I'm still in my healing. I'm not ready. So to me, that's kind of staying stuck in that, could be, you know, toxic shame, but also bypassing, taking action. So then that awareness becomes self-criticism. We turn that sword, that beautiful sword of discernment and awareness, back on ourselves in judgment. And then, Marie, thank you for saying that, healing becomes a postponement strategy or a procrastination strategy. I can't take action because I'm not fully healed, or I'm not fixed, or I'm not good enough. So then that creates the stuckness, the paralysis. And so for those that don't know, I've been a life coach for over 5 years now. I was in a dysfunctional, toxic workplace for almost 13 years. I was afraid to leave. I was terrified to leave. And I was not leaving and would never leave, was my stance, although my soul hated it every day. And then the universe removed my job from me. Well, that's not true. I chose not to stay, but they gave me an ultimatum that was horrible, and I said no. And this was in the height of COVID, when everything was uncertain. And the week before this news came, I had just given my first 2 life coaching sessions in my life. I had had a session with a coach for the first time, and was like, I told her like, hey, I'm thinking about being a life coach. I've never thought about this before. It'll probably take a lot of years of training and cost, many, many thousands of dollars. And she's like, no, you're ready now. You don't need any of that. And I was like, what? She was like, the work you've done in your own, recovery program, all the work you've done in your life, you can coach now. And I was like, really? She was like, yes. She said, are you up for a challenge? I said, okay. She said, go find 2 people and coach them this week. And I was like, oh my God, okay. And I did it. I did not stay in fear. I did not use excuses. I didn't go into, I'm not healed enough, or where am I going to find the people, or fear, because I was ready. And this is a week before the job told me no more job, basically. So I went and coached those 2 people. One of them was my brother-in-law. I just knew he would want to do it. He's a very wonderful, coachable person. And the other was a woman I had met because I was leading meditation. This was in Thailand during COVID when I was living there. And I'd connected with this woman, and I asked her, hey, would you like a free life coaching session? And she said yes. And I gave those sessions. And I'll never forget, leaving the first session, I felt like the sky had opened and light energy was pouring down from above. I was like, ah, it was like that energy, like, oh my God, this was so amazing. This is my purpose. This is what I'm meant to do. I didn't let fear stop me. And not everybody's story is going to be that black and white, whatever, this is my story, the universe, whatever the plan was, or my plan. I think, honestly, I'd created so much contrast. If y'all know Abraham Hicks, they talk about contrast. In my toxic job for 13 years, I had created so much contrast and fear and what I don't want, that, I was manifesting this beautiful what I do want life, that I was just needing to come into alignment with. And for whatever reason, this is the mystery of, this whole story I'm telling you. And then it was on December 21st, 2020 at 12 midnight, my job of 12 and a half years gave me this news. If you don't move back to the US within 6 weeks on your own dime during the height of COVID, because I was living overseas for 8 years at that point, working online. You have to live within 2 hours of the office. You have to start coming into the office. Then you don't have a job. So if I would have stayed in fear, I would have done that. when they told me that, I considered it for 2 seconds. And my soul screamed, hell fucking no, on the inside. And it just happened that I had just given those 2 life coaching sessions the week before. I mean, you can't make this shit up. Now, I didn't tell them right. I didn't say no immediately. I just said, oh my God, I'm going to have to think about this. Like, and I burst into tears. I mean, I was shocked. It was not easy. I mean, that job was the longest relationship I'd ever had with anything, even longer than my marriage. But I knew I wasn't going to say yes. You know, no matter COVID, no matter that it didn't make sense, no matter that I had $2,000 in the bank and that's it. No matter I didn't know what I was doing. So I told them, you know, 2 weeks later. I could have gotten a lawyer. I could have, you know, they shouldn't have done that. It really was against the law, blah, 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 blah. I could have gotten unemployment and there was no severance pay, like whatever. But I just was like, that's not in alignment with me and what I'm up to. Like, thank you, job, for 13 years. It allowed me to work remote around the world and was an amazing experience to have that and to get me out of the US in 2013. So I just let all that go. I didn't pursue anything. And I just jumped into the unknown, you know, height of COVID, no unemployment, barely any money in the bank, no severance after 13 years. That does sting. But I just was like, thank you, moving on. And I've never regretted it or looked back for a second. And that's been over 5 years. And I'm living my purpose. And I love it. I feel fulfilled in my life. Of course I have problems. Of course everything's not perfect. But I would have never imagined this life. I mean, I could have never imagined just the working online. And of course, before I got clean and sober, I would have never been able to imagine any of it. So, oh, I just see your question, Marie. I don't know why it's only popping up now. I haven't specifically helped with claustrophobia. That's a great question. It doesn't mean I can't. So, yeah, if you feel called to reach out, please do so. Hi, Tatiana. Thank you. Yeah, so the talk went in exactly the direction it was supposed to, but it does illustrate, you know, about being stuck, what gets in the way, and I gave you some, you know, real world examples of, you know, just my own life and what happened, and also how support can help. So if you feel like you're spinning your wheels, send me a message. Follow your heart's call. As I said, if you've not ever had a session with me before, it would be a gift. So, nothing to lose, except maybe your old life. Please follow me if you don't already. That really helps. me grow and serve more people. So that's the follow link. Follow me on YouTube, Facebook, Insta, website, all that good stuff. If you care to make a donation, if this was helpful, or if you want to support what I do, please do so. That also is very welcomed. Thank you so much. You can see that there as well. And my next live stream will be our card reading, our weekly card reading, on the 11th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So please join in for that. You are welcome. You know, I mean, none of this is easy, and the journey never ends. And you can do it. I mean, if I can do the things that I've said, so can you. And I mean, there's places where I still struggle greatly, so it's not like everything's fixed and shiny. But that's not humanity. That's not being human. That's not life. It's not one and done. Our minds do that. And it's a childhood trauma response to be in all or nothing thinking, black and white thinking, perfectionism. It's like we're all of it. I am this and I am that. So that's the deeper work, is healing the toxic shame, healing, you know, these self-judgments. And while doing that, taking different actions. Wonderful, Trish, Marie, thank you. So I'm sending you all so much love. I'm so grateful for all of you, for my community here. Hi, Tolkien. Thank you. So if you did just log in, please, this will be on my YouTube channel in a few minutes under the live section, live replay section. So you can go back to it there, or all of my live streams. Thank you for saying that. And I appreciate support over there as well. Thank you, Kat. Thank you so much for everybody. If you're new, if it's your first time, if it's your 100th time, I know so many of you have been here with me more than 100 times. I see you. I love you. I thank you. Or if you've come, 5, I mean, it doesn't matter. J.E. Thank you as always, Tatiana. Much love to all of you. Monica, thank you for saying hello. You know, they changed the format here on the lives where I can see everybody now. But it's different. In the old days, your circles would float by and I could see you and say hello. So, yeah, the point is that unless I click and look or you say something, I don't know you're here. So, wonderful, Trish. So, for those of you who have lots of to think about, my question to you is, what action are you going to take based on whatever you've discovered today? It doesn't have to be something major. It could be the tiniest thing. And again, if you want support with that, please reach out. Shiloh, thank you for reaching out and saying hello. I wouldn't have known you were here. You crossed my mind last week. So, of course you're here. Oh, wonderful. Thank you for the gift of your presence and everyone here. Sending you all so much love. I will see you in a few days for our weekly card reading. You're welcome, Nancy. Bye-bye.